Scientists still can't replicate this mechanism in the lab, and it might one day save thousands of human lives. But that's not the strangest thing a bear can do. The strangest thing is yet to come. Today, you'll learn what a bear really is. Not a stuffed toy, not a horror movie villain, but one of the most complex, intelligent, and underestimated predators on the planet. And after this video, you'll never see it the same way again. Imagine you're walking through the woods in Montana. Early morning, fog over the river. The air smells of wet pine and damp leaves. Silence. And then you hear a branch snap. Not far. Very close. You look up, and 15 feet away, a grizzly bear stands looking at you. It doesn't growl. It just stares. Its head is the size of your suitcase. Its shoulders would tower over your head if it stood on its hind legs. And in that moment, everything you knew about bears from cartoons, Winnie the Pooh with his honey pot, Baloo from the Jungle Book, Friendly Paddington with his marmalade sandwich, all of it evaporates in 1 second. Here's the problem with bears in American culture. We domesticated them in our imagination. Smokey Bear on Forest Service posters says, "Only you can prevent wildfires." The Chicago Bears are one of the most iconic NFL teams. We call teddy bears, stuffed animals we give to children on their first birthday, bears. We made the bear safe, cuddly, predictable. And that's a colossal misunderstanding. Indigenous peoples of North America, the Lakota, Ojibwe, Blackfeet, never made that mistake. For them, the bear was not a symbol of coziness, but a warrior spirit, a being that walks between worlds. Ojibwe hunters, before killing a bear, would ask its forgiveness. And that wasn't just ritual, it was recognition. You are facing an equal. And here's the interesting part. The more scientists study bears, the more they realize indigenous peoples were closer to the truth than we thought. But about one specific bear ability, the one that puts it on an entirely separate level among predators, we'll talk a little later. Because when you hear this, you'll understand. A bear is not just an animal. It's something fundamentally different. Let's start with scale. Because when you see a bear in a photo, you're probably underestimating its size. A large male brown bear, an Alaskan grizzly, weighs between 600 and 1,400 pounds. The upper end is roughly like a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, plus another adult human on top. And it can stand on its hind legs and reach up to 8 feet tall, higher than a basketball rim. On all fours, a grizzly stands 4.5 feet at the shoulder, about the height of an average 10-year-old child. And none of this is flabby mass. Underneath the fur is powerful muscle, especially in the shoulder hump. The grizzly's paw. Let's talk about it separately. Claws on the front paw reach 4 inches in length, but unlike lion or tiger claws, which retract, bear claws are fixed. They don't hide. They are always out, and they aren't designed just for attack. First and foremost, they are tools. The bear digs with them deeper in one stroke than a shovel can. It rips apart rotting logs, weighing several hundred pounds, with a single flick of its wrist. One front paw strike from a grizzly delivers an estimated force of about 1,000 pounds. For comparison, a heavyweight boxing champion punches with around 1,700 pounds of force, but he weighs 3 to 4 times less than the bear. Now speed. Here's a fact that most people know in theory, but don't truly grasp. A grizzly can accelerate to 35 miles per hour. Usain Bolt, at his peak, ran 27.8 miles per hour. The bear is 7 miles per hour faster than Bolt. And it does that on uneven ground, through forest, on all fours. The bear's nose is a whole story. The olfactory area in a bear's brain is 5 times larger than a dog's, and 100 times larger than a human's. A bear can smell food from up to 20 miles away. It can sniff out an animal carcass buried under 3 feet of snow. Hunters in Canada report that bears have found sealed food containers buried in the ground, latched in multiple layers, just by scent seeping through the walls. The bear's nose is the most powerful biological scent detector on land of any mammal known to us. Diet. Here's a paradox that always surprises people. The grizzly is classified as a carnivore, meat eater by ancestry, but 80 to 90% of its diet is plant matter. Berries, nuts, roots, grass, acorns. It eats everything. In the fall, what biologists call hyperphagia, a bear consumes up to 20,000 calories a day. That's about 10 times the recommended intake for an adult man. In just a few weeks, it puts on up to 30% of its body weight, entirely as fat. That fat reserve is what fuels it through 7 months of winter hibernation without a single meal. In the wild, a brown bear lives 20 to 25 years. In captivity, up to 35 years. The recorded maximum age for a zoo bear is 36 years. But the real record isn't age. The real record is what happens to its body during hibernation. And we'll get to that in a few minutes, because that's where one of the most important medical mysteries lies, one that scientists have only begun to unravel. Bears are loners. That's the first thing to understand. They don't have packs, prides, or permanent social groups. Every adult bear lives and hunts in its own individual home range. For a female grizzly, that range is about 50 to 300 square miles. For a male, up to 600 square miles. Roughly the size of the entire state of Rhode Island, all the territory of a single bear. But loner doesn't mean primitive. Bears communicate, and their communication is more complex than it seems. They leave so-called rub trees or scratch trees, claw marks on bark at a certain height. These aren't random scratches. They carry information: sex, age, status, readiness to mate. Other bears literally read these marks with their noses, through scent glands on their paws that leave chemical signals along with the scratches. In 2014, researchers at the University of Montana documented that young male bears deliberately avoided trees marked by large dominant males, even when those males were miles away. That's not instinct. That's an informed decision based on decoded data. The bear's voice is a separate language. Growling is a threat. But bears also make huffing sounds, short explosive exhales through the nose, when they're tense but not attacking. A mother bear with cubs makes cooing sounds while nursing. And cubs make a quiet, almost bird-like chirp when lost. These aren't just noises. They are intentional communication. Now reproduction. And here bears do something almost no other mammal can do. Mating in brown bears happens in May to June. But the fertilized egg doesn't implant in the uterus immediately. It enters a biological pause until November. This is called delayed implantation. Only when the female goes into hibernation with enough fat reserves does the embryo begin to develop. If there's not enough fat, the pregnancy terminates by itself. Nature literally checks. Are you ready? Cubs are born in January to February, right in the den, while the mother sleeps. They weigh between 8 and 12 ounces, about the size of a soda can. Blind, hairless, almost no fur, and the mother nurses them without fully waking up. Imagine you're asleep, your heart beats 8 times a minute, body temperature is lowered, and your children are right there, growing and feeding. This happens every winter in the forests of Alaska, Canada, and Russia. By spring, the cubs weigh 10 to 15 pounds, and for the next year and a half to 2 years, they never leave their mother's side. This is one of the longest periods of maternal care among predatory mammals in North America. The mother teaches them everything: where to find food in different seasons, how to catch fish, how to build a den, which humans and places to avoid. This is not fully genetically programmed behavior. It is learning. Knowledge passed from mother to offspring. And here's the most important part. In 2006, biologist John Hecht from the University of Alaska published the results of a long-term observation of a group of grizzlies in Katmai National Preserve. He documented that bears who spent more time with their mother, 2.5 years versus 1.5 years, showed significantly more complex foraging strategies as adults. They knew more locations, used more flexible tactics, were less prone to conflict with humans. The behavioral difference persisted throughout their adult lives. This is direct evidence that bears have what biologists call cultural transmission of knowledge. Not instinct, not reflex. Learned behavior passed across generations. Another documented case. In the 1990s on the Brooks River in Katmai, scientists observed a female grizzly called Bear 128. Yes, with a number, because science doesn't use names, only tags. She developed a unique fishing technique. Instead of standing at the waterfall like most bears, she went upstream and waited for salmon in a narrow spot between rocks. Her cubs adopted the same technique. No other bears in the area did this. This was not a coincidence. It was the transfer of an individual skill through learning. One bear invented a technique, and she passed it to her children. The bear is the only large predatory mammal in North America that simultaneously demonstrates cultural transmission of knowledge, deferred learning, individual strategies, and long-term memory of specific locations. Neither mountain lions, nor wolves, nor lynx come close in complexity of cognitive processes. If you've made it this far, you're one of those people who genuinely cares. Hit the like button. It literally helps this video find more people. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And comment. What animal do you think's the most underestimated on the planet? Bears are not one species. They are an entire family, and they're spread across the planet, from Arctic ice to the tropical jungles of Borneo. Let's break down who's who. The brown bear, Ursus arctos, lives in North America, Europe, and Asia. Its historic range once covered most of the northern hemisphere. Today, the largest populations are in Alaska, Canada, Russia, and Scandinavia. According to IUCN estimates, there are about 200,000 brown bears left in the world. That sounds like a lot, but for context, 200 years ago, there were 3 times as many, and they lived from Mexico to Britain. The American black bear, Ursus americanus, is the opposite, a partial success story. Its population is estimated at 600,000 to 900,000 in the US and Canada alone. That's more than all other bear species on the planet combined. The black bear has adapted to living near humans better than any other large predator. Now, the contrast that leaves no one indifferent. The giant panda. Yes, it is a bear. A true bear of the family Ursidae. Not a bear-like animal, not a bear relative, a bear. In 2016, the IUCN moved the giant panda from endangered to vulnerable, the first time in decades. This is a direct result of captive breeding programs and bamboo forest restoration in China. As of the last census in 2021, there were about 1,864 giant pandas in the wild. For comparison, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, home of the Giants and Jets, holds 82,500 people. The entire world's wild panda population wouldn't even fill the lower bowl. But there's a species that gets far less attention. The sun bear, arctos malayanus, lives in the tropical forests of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar. It's the smallest bear in the world. It weighs between 60 and 145 pounds, roughly the size of a chunky Labrador retriever. But its tongue is up to 10 inches long, the longest tongue of any bear. The sun bear uses it to extract honey and insect larvae from tree cavities. Its population has declined by more than 30% in the last 30 years due to deforestation. The IUCN lists it as vulnerable, but many biologists believe that assessment is outdated and too optimistic. And here, a direct link to you, to your morning coffee, to your kitchen. Palm oil, the sun bear's #1 enemy. It's in thousands of products on American supermarket shelves. Margarine, cookies, chips, chocolate, cosmetics, biofuel. Palm oil plantations in Malaysia and Indonesia have destroyed tens of millions of hectares of tropical forest over 40 years. This is not abstract environmentalism. Every time you buy a product without the certified sustainable palm oil label, there's a chance you are indirectly funding the destruction of the last wild habitat of the sun bear. One fact, one connection. Not an accusation, just information. The main threats to bears in general are 3: habitat loss, deforestation, development, fragmentation of ranges, poaching. Bear bile is used in traditional Asian medicine, and despite bans, the market exists. According to Animals Asia, over 10,000 bears are kept captive on so-called bear farms in China alone for their bile. And the third threat, human-bear conflict. A bear that finds food near people will come back. A bear that comes back will sooner or later get a bullet. If nothing changes, according to IUCN projections, by 2053 out of 8 bear species could move into the endangered category, 3 out of 8, in 25 years. The bear in human culture is a separate story that stretches back longer than written history. Let's start with North America. The Blackfeet called the bear Kiayu, the one who stands upright. Standing on hind legs is not a threat display for a bear. It's a way to get a better sniff of the air. But for people seeing it for the first time, it was eerily human-like. Hence the idea of the bear as a creature between worlds. In the mythology of many Siberian peoples, the bear is an ancestor who returned in animal form. To kill a bear is to kill a relative. You could still kill it, but only with ritual, with forgiveness, with gratitude. In Russia, the bear is a national symbol. But few know that on the coat of arms of Yaroslavl, one of Russia's oldest cities, a bear has appeared with a halberd in its paws since the 12th century. According to legend, the city's founder, Yaroslav the Wise, killed a bear that had attacked locals and built the city on that spot. The bear went from threat to symbol of overcome threat. This transformation, from enemy to protector, happened in cultures around the world. And now, the main conflict. And I want you to hear this without accusation, because both sides act on their own logic. The bear knows how to remember. We've already established that. It remembers where it found food a year ago. It remembers that in that red trash can at the Yosemite campground last July, there was a tuna sandwich. And it will return. Not because it's aggressive, not because it wants to attack a human, but because it has a brain optimized for efficient calorie hunting. And that brain works flawlessly. The bear is doing exactly what nature designed it for. Humans are also doing what they're designed for. Building houses, setting up campgrounds, leaving trash, storing food in tents, expanding suburbs into the mountain regions of Colorado, Wyoming, California. And at the intersection of these two logics, a bear dies. In the US, between 500 and 1,000 bears are destroyed every year for so-called nuisance behavior, for doing exactly what they're good at, finding food where food exists. Here's the golden hook I've been holding for this moment. Bears in Yosemite have learned to open car doors. Not with tools, with their claws. They figured out that pulling the handle opens the door. The park documented over 900 bear break-ins to vehicles between 2001 and 2007. Damage: over $2.5 million. The park had to develop special metal food storage containers and launch an education campaign for tourists. Bears weren't breaking into cars because they were hungry. They were breaking in because they had learned that there was food inside. Causal reasoning. In action. In a Yosemite parking lot. Now for the good news. Because there is good news. The Grizzly Bear Recovery Program, run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, was launched back in 1982. And there are results. The grizzly population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem grew from roughly 136 individuals in 1975 to over 700 by 2021. That's a 5-fold increase. Real success. Bears have returned to areas where they hadn't been seen for decades. In Europe, the brown bear is returning to Italy, Slovenia, Austria, after centuries of absence. In Slovenia, the population has grown so much that the country has begun exporting bears to other European nations for reintroduction. That's called transboundary conservation, and it works. Animals Asia has been working for over 20 years to close bear farms in China and Vietnam. In that time, they have rescued hundreds of bears from cages the size of their own bodies. Some of those bears had spent 10 to 15 years in captivity. Most of them had to learn to walk again. Some had to learn how to play. It takes years, but it happens. And now, that medical mystery I mentioned at the very beginning. Remember? 7 months without food, water, or muscle loss. Scientists call it metabolic magic. In 2019, a team from the University of Washington and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology published a study attempting to figure out exactly how the bear preserves muscle mass during hibernation. In humans bedridden for just a few weeks, muscles begin to atrophy within 10 days. In bears, zero atrophy over 7 months of complete immobility. The mechanism turned out to be linked to a special type of gut microbiome that activates during hibernation and literally recycles muscle breakdown products back into amino acids. The bear's body doesn't destroy muscle, it reuses it in a closed loop. Researchers immediately saw the potential. If this mechanism can be replicated pharmacologically, it could revolutionize treatment for muscle atrophy in paralyzed patients after major surgeries during long-term space flight. NASA officially funds research into bear hibernation as part of its preparation for crewed missions to Mars. A bear lying in a den under the snow in the forests of Alaska might one day help humans reach another planet. That's not a metaphor. That is literally happening right now. That is what a bear really is. Not just a predator, not just a symbol, not just a cartoon character. It is a living biochemical laboratory that over millions of years of evolution has solved problems that medical science has been wrestling with for the last half-century. If you've made it to this point, you've already done something important. You've learned the truth about the bear, not the version painted on children's toys, the real one. Share this video with someone who loves science or nature. Let this story find one more viewer. Comment below. What surprised you most? The medical discoveries? Bears breaking into cars in Yosemite? Cub the size of a soda can, born while their mother sleeps? Every comment helps this channel grow and helps stories like this reach people who care. The bear survived the Ice Age, survived hunting, survived deforestation and urban sprawl. It continues to live alongside us, in national parks, in the forests of Montana and Alaska, in the bamboo groves of China, in the tropics of Borneo. It doesn't ask for protection. It just does what it does. Finds food, raises its young, remembers the world around it with a precision we never expected. The only question is, will we be smart enough not to destroy a creature that still has so much to teach us? Thank you for watching. If you made it to the very last second, you're not just a viewer. You're someone who cares. Like, subscribe, and comment. What amazed you most about the bear? And remember, the world is far more astonishing than it seems at first glance.